Okay, so hello. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be talking about mindful eating, and I'll just start by giving this a little bit of context, just so that you know where this is coming from. So when I studied nutrition, I studied with precision nutrition, and precision nutrition is a habit-based coaching program, and so the whole concept of precision nutrition is really to teach women habits over time and to slowly change their habits. And so when I use that sort of methodology, I had all these different habits that I would teach women, and we would focus in on protein and carbs and fats and sleep and stress and all these different things. And the first two habits that I taught women were how to eat slowly and how to eat until they were 80% satisfied, which is what we are going to be doing today. Those are the two habits. And you can kind of think of this as mindful eating. You can put it in that category. So I want to start by just explaining what mindful eating is. Really, it's about building awareness, right? That's what it stems down to. Is when we're eating mindfully, we're just being aware. We're being aware to what is happening right now, because it's so easy in this day and age to have so many different things taking our attention away from us, that when we're eating, a lot of times we're doing so many other things at the same time that we're not actually even paying any attention at all to the food that we're eating, apart from the fact that we're just like fork to mouth, fork to mouth, fork to mouth, right? Like, we are not mindful, we are not aware, we're not in the moment. But if we can become more aware of being in the moment when we're eating, then there's a lot of things that we can start to learn. So we can gain a lot of control over our eating habits, over our behaviors. We can start to gain control and prevent bad decisions, like, cravings, emotional eating, stress eating, that kind of stuff. We can start to learn more about what works for us, what doesn't work for us, what we like, what we don't like. We can learn what triggers us in good ways or in bad ways. But it all starts with awareness, because, again, for so many of us, we're so freaking busy that we're not even paying attention to what we do. And I am 100% to blame here. I never used to be this way until I had my daughter. And these days, like, I catch myself all the time. I did it this morning. I was furiously, like, responding to comments on Facebook and responding to some of you guys while eating my breakfast. And I had to, like, stop myself and be like, Haley, you're not even tasting your food. Like, put the computer away, take a second, eat your breakfast. But this is just, it's what we do, right? It's just part of what we do. This is what our modern lifestyle is like. So if you are on Facebook or on Zoom, regardless of where you're watching from, I want to know right now, is this something that you do? Do you find yourself sort of just eating without actually being present or paying attention to the fact that you're even eating, because you're multitasking, or you're thinking of other things, or you're on Facebook, or you're watching TV, or you're standing at the counter, which is what I do, because you feel like you don't have time to actually sit down and eat. So put that in the comments. Would love to hear if this is something that you struggle with. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about those two different habits. So we're going to talk about two habits that are really sort of like at the basis of eating mindfully, and how they can be very beneficial to your journey, your weight loss journey with me here. So the first one, like I said, is going to be eating slowly. And then the second one is going to be learning how to eat until satisfied. Okay. So Martine said, or Bridget said, yes. Okay. Yeah, totally. And Martine said, yes, mostly breakfast and lunch. Yeah. Dinner is usually easier, because dinner is sort of like that time where we all sit down around the table. Hopefully, you sit down around the table and you sort of take that moment. But breakfast and lunch, lunch for me is oftentimes like I'm at my desk exactly where I am right now, and I've got my meal in front of me, and I'm like eating and I'm working on my computer at the same time. So Again, I am totally guilty of this. And this is something that I need to focus on just as much as you guys need to this month. So I'm going to be doing the work with you. This is my homework too. Okay, so let's start with eating slowly. So this is simply like, it is one of the most powerful things that you can do to improve your overall health. Like, it is that important. And research shows over and over and over again that people who eat quickly gain more weight. And it's simply because their caloric intake is higher. Because if you eat very quickly, you're missing your body's satiety signals. You're missing, like, when we eat, and we'll kind of get into this, but when you eat, even the act of chewing starts this whole biochemical process in your body of all these hormonal reactions that are supposed to happen to send signals from your stomach to your brain to tell you, hey, you're good. But when you're shoveling food down, that is not happening. Or by the time it happens, it's too late. So that's why eating slowly is such a really key habit here. And also, as I'm going through this, if you guys have any questions, you can put them either in Zoom or on Facebook, and I will look into those, okay? So eating slowly, it is one of the biggest secrets to managing your weight and losing weight. But although it sounds really, 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 really simple, it's actually really hard to do, especially if this is something that you don't do naturally. So just as we go through this is something I want you to practice, but it might not happen overnight. It might not happen in the next 2 weeks. It might not happen in the next year, but I do promise you that it is a super key habit that everyone should continue to work on. Okay, so let's talk about why slow eating is awesome. So again, partially it comes down to just awareness, right? Like, it helps us to develop more awareness, to kind of stay in the moment and be present with our food. And when we can do that, and when we can slow down, again, a lot of women eat too much because they're simply unaware, or they're not paying attention. So they're unaware of how much they're eating, or maybe even how often they're eating, or how they should be feeling while they're eating. And so if we can, and a lot of women, and I know some of you do this, is that you rely on external measures of control to determine your portion sizes, right? Like calorie counting, like MyFitnessPal. But if you can learn to eat slowly, instead of using all of these external measures to manage our appetite, it comes from within. It's trusting the body. It's knowing what the body really needs. And your body innately knows when you're hungry and when to stop. We've completely stopped listening to those signals, or we're desensitized to them. So slowly eating, the other thing about slowly eating is, like I said before, when we eat slowly, we give the body time to send very important information from the GI tract, from your whole digestive system, back to the brain to tell us that we are full or that we are satiated. And so if we're eating too quickly, if we're rushing, if we're not smelling or tasting or chewing, then our bodies don't notice these, the signal just doesn't happen as fast. And so, like, just for example, just the mere fact of chewing our food, just that movement, or when we start to experience that, we already start to release hormones in our pancreas, in our small intestine. Like, our body is preparing to start digesting. And so if we're not eating slowly, the other thing that can happen is that our digestion in general is just really, really poor. Like, we just have terrible digestion. And that can make us nutrient deficient. And that could be one of the reasons that we have cravings, right? So it really kind of stems from that. The other thing that I love about eating slowly is that actually the two habits I'm teaching you today is that it has nothing to do with what you're eating. And so it doesn't matter if you're sort of following the program or not following the program, or if you're on a cruise ship, or you're on vacation, or you're at your family's. You have no control possibly over the food that's just been given to you, and you end up at mom and dad's and you get served a big bowl of pasta. These are the two habits that you can rely on, because you can do them anywhere with any food. And like I said, I have been teaching women these two habits for like I don't know, like over 5 years, 6 years, 7 years now. And even back then, when I first started training in this method, I remember women who would, go on cruise ships and spend 2 weeks in all you can eat buffet scenarios and come back and be like, I ate whatever I wanted. All I focused on was eating slowly and eating to satisfied, and I didn't gain any weight, because that is the power of these habits. So really pay attention here, because it's so good. So like I said, it's super simple. This whole concept of eating slowly is simple, 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 but it's hard, hard, hard. It's hard because it's just not something that we do naturally. So what I want to do over the next couple of weeks, again, this is the focus of the month. And so we're going to be diving into this a lot. In the first 2 weeks of the month of May, I had to look at my calendar to be like, what month are we in? May, right? So for the first 2 weeks, we're going to focus on eating slowly. And I'm going to give you guys a ton of different tips and tricks, and we're going to try different ones. And so every day you'll see, I'm going to post it and I'm going to say, okay, today I want you to try this. And you can try it with dinner or breakfast or lunch, whichever one you want to do. But I just want you to start thinking about how you can begin to eat slowly. So here are some things. One mantra that I really like, or saying that I really like, is that you should never have food on your fork and in your mouth at the same time. Because think of like our tendency of how we eat right now. So we put food on the fork, we put it in our mouth. While we are semi-chewing, we're already going in for the next bite. There's no slowing down there. There's no mindfulness there, right? But if we are having a bite, like put the food on your fork, have your bite, put the fork down on the table, and you are not allowed to pick it up until you've finished chewing and you are ready for your next bite. And then while you are still chewing, tune into what you're doing. Like tune into it, be aware, be conscious of the fact that you're chewing. Another trick that we're going to try is chewing each bite 20 times before you swallow. Because again, because we're so rushed as women these days, right? Like there's this rushing women syndrome. Dr. Libby Weaver wrote this whole book about rushing women syndrome, but we're so rushed in our modern society and in this time of our life that we're like chew, chew, swallow, chew, chew, swallow. And if you think about it, these massive chunks of food are going into our stomach, but your teeth were designed to do a lot of the digestive process, right? We're relying on our stomach to digest food, but really it begins with chewing. And we have to get back into the habit of chewing, and chewing 20 times each bite. That is a surefire way of slowing you down, and it's going to feel painful. So you're going to be like, oh my God, really? But that's what we need to do. And especially I think at our age, because we naturally have less digestive enzymes, we naturally have less stomach acid, both of which are required to break down food. And when food isn't properly breaking down and it gets into our lower intestine, or our small intestine and our large intestine, what can happen is that it can cause inflammation. Like particles of food can get into the bloodstream that aren't supposed to be there, or they're just not broken down enough, or you just get nutrient deficiencies because, like I said, you're not getting those nutrients. They're not even making their way into your bloodstream. And then they're getting into the large intestine where they're not supposed to be, and maybe they're fermenting in there because your bacteria are eating them up, and now you're bloated and you're gassy and you feel like crap, right? So chewing 20 times. Another trick is eating with chopsticks, because we're not used to eating with chopsticks, right? So the moment that you sit down with a pair of chopsticks and it's like clumsy and you know like food falls out, you're naturally going to be eating slower. So that's another fun one we're going to try. We're going to try using our non-dominant hand. So if you're used to eating with your right hand, we're just going to put the fork in the left hand. And that is just a super simple trick. Martine said I froze. I think I'm back now. Can you give me a thumbs up if I'm back? Unfortunately, that's why I like to do it on Zoom. Sometimes on Facebook, I freeze up because I'm on what's it's called there, the new satellite system, the internet system developed by Tesla, but it freezes sometimes, but usually momentarily. So eating with our non-dominant hand. Okay, thank you, Bridget. Okay, what else? We're also gonna practice just setting a timer when we eat and becoming aware of how quickly we eat. And so like set the timer and maybe set it for 10 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever it may be, and just see how long it takes for you to eat. And ideally, what we want to move up to is 20 minutes, because that's what research suggests, is that it takes 20 minutes for those satiety signals to start getting from our digestive system to our brain, right? So logically, if we're eating like within 20 minutes, if we're eating in 10 minutes, then that potential of overeating, because we are not allowing our hormones to do what they're supposed to do, is going to be a lot greater. Now, hopefully with you guys, because I'm teaching you how to eat the right foods in the right quantities, that's not happening, but there is that potential, okay? The other thing that we're going to try is just trying to get rid of distractions, right? So getting into the habit of when you sit down for your meal, you are getting rid of the TV, books, magazines, iPhones, Facebook, Instagram, everything. And you're actually just sitting there with your meal and your family or whatever it may be, but getting rid of the distractions. It might require scheduling eating times, of putting it into your calendar the same way that you schedule your workouts, your walks, hopefully your stress management, all of that stuff, the appointments. Like we set an appointment to go to the dentist or go to the doctor, or, have business meetings. Well, we have to start scheduling time for eating, right? And so making sure that it's a priority in our life. What else? Let me just think here. I think that is it. So what you may start to notice as you do this is that, again, you may notice that you rush. You rush way more than you may notice, right? And a lot of women, whoops, no, I just lost my connection here. Just a second. Oh, shoot. Okay. Give me 2 seconds, ladies, okay? Whoopsie.
Okay, you're doing great with this multi-technology.
Resume. Okay, so one exercise that I'm going to get you guys to do this month is I want you to do as a little bit of a test, like your favorite junk food, whatever it is, right? So for me, I remember when I first did this, I did it with Doritos because that's my weakness. I love cheesy Doritos. And so what you do is you basically just sit down quietly, no distractions, with whatever sort of favorite junk food you have, and you actually just eat it, and you pay attention to what it actually tastes like. And you start to be like, oh my God, this is disgusting. Like it's so chemical, like it's actually not tasty. And so it's just a really interesting test to do. So we'll add that to the list of things for the month, of just little experiments. Okay, do you guys have any questions about eating slowly before I move on to eating to satisfied? Any questions? Thanks for joining back on live, ladies. My phone died. I was not planning on using my phone, but I'm having some technical issues today. So anywho, any questions about eating slowly? And Brenda and Michelle, since it's disabled in the chat for some reason, feel free to unmute yourselves if you do have questions, okay? All right, so what we'll do is we're gonna move on to the second one. And this one is really, again, it's simple, but it's not necessarily easy, but I think it's such an important habit, which is learning to eat until satisfied. And again, this is something that I naturally do. I have done this naturally my entire life. Like I rarely eat until I'm stuffed or full. Like it's just something that I naturally do. But for a lot of women, this is really, really hard. And I think that this stems from a couple of things. Again, I think it's the fact that we're distracted, but also a lot of us grew up being told that we have to eat everything that's on our plate. And so I want to know if that's you, right? So is this something that you grew up with? Is this concept that whatever's on your plate, you have to finish it? Like this is what we were told growing up. And so a lot of women continue to eat everything that's on their plate, even if they're not hungry anymore, right? Because that's just what they think they have to do. So what we're going to talk about now is sort of this concept of, again, learning to tune into your body and using your body to know when you should stop eating. So instead of using external measures like using MyFitnessPal, is really tuning into what your body is feeling like, and so that you know, like, okay, it is time to call it quits. Martine said she can eat until satisfaction if there's no dessert involved. All right, so okay, so the goal of this habit is that what we want to learn how to do is, again, eat until we're satisfied or no longer hungry, or you can visualize being 80% full. So, and this is going to be hard to quantify at the beginning, especially if this is something that you struggle with. But understand that it is just to give you like a visual, right? It's not like a perfect 80%, but we want to start thinking of these words like satisfied, no longer hungry, 80% full, as sort of the feeling that we're going after. Let me just see here. So what do I'm just looking at my notes to remember where I'm going with this. Okay, so basically what we have to recognize is that, again, there's a lot happening around us that make us no longer sense into this feeling of satisfied but not full. So some of the things that are going to have an impact on us are our physical environment. I've talked about this before, like your physical environment will definitely impact how much you eat. And there are a ton of different research that has been done on this, like behavioral research. Like, for instance, they know that if you give, there's this really interesting study done on people. They gave them like this big vat of stale popcorn, and they went to a movie theater and they told women, oh, you, or men and women, here, you can have this big vat of popcorn. And it was stale. It was 2 days stale, but just because it was on their lap, most people would just eat the whole thing, even though the popcorn was stale, just because it was there. And then there's our oral environment, right? So like tastes and textures, sweet, fatty, umami, those are all things that are going to influence how much we eat. Creamy, crunchy, these are all things that are going to influence it. And obviously, like what I've talked to you guys before is this concept of like hyper palatable foods. So foods that are sweet and salty and crunchy and creamy and everything all at once. Those are the worst ones. Like pizza. Pizza's got it all, right? Like it's got it all. Those are the worst ones for overeating. And then there are social environment. Those are other things that are going to influence us, like our family, our friends, our peers, the people we eat with. So if your eating partner is a speedy eater, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to be a speedy eater too, because we almost like we start matching our partner's tempo. So there are so many different things that influence it that we start to, again, disconnect from feelings of satiety and hunger as well, right? So I think what it boils down to is that, again, it comes down to like awareness and just starting to be more mindful and more aware of what we're eating, when we're eating, how it's affecting us, right? And as we're going through this whole mindfulness practice of eating for the month, things that you might start to notice is like signs and symptoms of food intolerances, for example. And I know these are things that I'm hoping you guys learned during your detox, but you know, a lot of these signals, we just ignore them, right? Like, you know, we've got psoriasis, but we ignore it. We just figure, okay, well, this is normal, but really it might have to do with the foods that we're eating. Like our body sends us lots of signals, but we just don't know how to read those signals anymore. Or maybe you're not physically hungry. Like this is something that happens to a lot of the women that come into this program, is that they're not actually hungry, or you're eating when you're not hungry, or you're eating to past fullness, right? So these are all things that we need to learn to recognize and develop awareness first, and then from there figure out how to become more aware and take control of it over it. So I would say that within the context of what we're doing inside this program of moving towards a lower carb approach with more fat and more fiber, you are already eating foods that are going to make this whole process a lot easier. So that is awesome. But what I want to kind of describe is sort of how you should feel throughout the day when you're eating. And of course, understanding that it's not like within the context of how we're eating right now, you probably won't notice this as much depending on where you're at in the program. Some of you are fasting longer, so it's going to be totally dependent on where you're at, but maybe think back to what you were doing before you started. But essentially, it's like when you first finish eating, when you just finished eating, if you're eating the right amount of food, if you are not overeating, then you want to just feel like content, satisfied, right? It's not full, like your stomach shouldn't feel full, it's just content and satisfied. And this is going to be a lot easier to do once again when we're eating enough protein, when we're filling our body with lots of vegetables and fiber and healthy fats. Fat and protein, by the way, those are the two that when we start chewing, those are the two that the body is sensing into to start sending those satiety signals. It's not carbs. So if you're eating like a chocolate bar, that signal of fullness and satiety is not going to get to your brain anywhere near as fast as if you're eating, say, a chocolate fat bomb. Okay. So that's how you should feel right when you finished eating. So again, you're satisfied, but you're content, but you're not full. About 60 minutes after you eat, right? So about 1 hour later, you should still feel satisfied. You should not need or desire food. If you feel like you need food 60 minutes after you ate, that's a good indication that you probably did not eat enough at your last meal. By the time you reach the 2 or 3 hour mark, and I say 2 or 3 because it's really going to depend on how you've composed your meal. So someone who goes to McDonald's, oh, hi, sweetie. It's also the weekend. So do you want to say hi to everybody? This is Sydney. You can say hello to everybody. That is beautiful. Thank you so much. Okay. Okay, where was I? Yeah, so about 2 to 3 hours after you eat, and again, it's really going to depend on how you've composed your meals. Your flat belly meals with protein and veggies and fiber and fat, you're probably, by the time you're at 2 to 3 hours, you're just going to start feeling hunger, right? Like it's not even hunger. You just might start to feel like a little bit peckish, right? There might be a little bit of something there. If you go to McDonald's and you have a burger, it's probably going to happen a lot faster. 3 to 4 hours later is when you're starting to feel that hunger again. This is how you should feel, right? So 3 to 4 hours later, now that feeling of emptiness starts to come back. And this is when we have to start thinking about what we're going to eat next. And after 4 hours, 4 or 5 hours, this is when that hunger can get out of control, especially for women who are not following what we're doing. The way that we're eating, and because we're teaching our body how to access stored body fat, this applies a little bit less to us. And you'll see this, especially as you move into the phase 3 of the program and we're doing longer fasts. We don't really have to worry about this as much anymore, but for women who are relying heavily on carbohydrates, like 4 or 5 hours after a meal, when their blood sugar levels crash and they're hangry, they have gone too far, right? So what a good thing to do is, again, sort of like starting to tune into where your body is at. And so with Precision Nutrition, we had a scale, and these are all things that I'm going to post during the month inside the group. So don't worry if you don't remember these all, but what I want you to do right now is we're going to do a little exercise. So I'm going to get you to close your eyes, and I'm going to get you to put your hand on your belly. And if you haven't eaten in a while, you're going to probably feel a little bit hungry. So if you're feeling hungry at the moment, or if you're about to eat, then this is what I want you to tell me right now. And you can put it in the comments. So right now, if you're about to go eat, do you feel, 1, absolutely painfully starving, 2, very hungry, 3, moderately hungry, 4, a little hungry, or 5, neither hungry nor full? Okay, so I want you to put that in the comments, what you guys currently feel. So I'll say those again.
Can you say it again?
Yeah, I'm going to say those again. You betcha. Okay, so 1, absolutely painfully starving. 2, very hungry. 3, moderately hungry. 4, a little hungry. 5, neither hungry nor full. Okay, so those are sort of like the levels of hunger. So let's see here. So Bridget said 3, so moderately hungry. Okay, what about you ladies? Brenda and Michelle, feel free to unmute yourselves and let me know where you're currently at.
I'm only at 5.
You're okay, neither hungry nor full. Okay, and you said you're about to eat, right, Michelle?
Well, yeah, I mean, because it'll be noon in 15 minutes where I am, and I ate at 7:30.
Okay. Okay. So like I said, with the style of eating that I'm teaching you, you're going to find that you're going to be fuller longer. So it might take longer to feel hungry. It's not a bad thing. It's
So
a good thing.
I could just put it off a little bit.
You could totally put it off a bit. Yeah, totally. Yeah. I want you guys to use your body cues to know when to eat, right? And so if you had, breakfast, what did you have this morning, Michelle? Did you have a shake, or did you do like breakfast and egg or eggs and veggies?
I did the scrambled eggs with avocado and tomatoes. And
yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. So again, right, these are foods that help us stay satiated a lot longer. And so you maybe lunch, like if you think you have to eat lunch at 12 because that's what sort of conventional wisdom is. It's like, why do you feel like you need to eat at 12? You know what I mean?
Yeah. For me, it's just always been a habit because by 12 I'm starving. But
okay.
Because I wasn't having enough fat in my breakfast. So I know that now.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. More fat. Yeah. It's definitely, so that's interesting, right? That's a good thing. So Martine said 5, neither hungry nor full. And Brenda said 4, a little hungry. So it's, as you can see, like when it comes to hunger, there can be sort of different levels. It's not just hungry or not hungry, right? It's like we can start to sense into where we're at. And I'm going to give you guys all of these, this sort of rating scale, but ideally when we're eating, we want to eat when we're sort of moderately hungry. That's kind of where I want you guys to start thinking about food. Not necessarily very hungry, and definitely not like painfully hungry, right? And with the way that I'm teaching you guys how to eat, you probably won't sense very hungry or painfully hungry anymore, which is a good thing, because again, I'm trying to give you guys that metabolic flexibility that you're not dependent on having food all the time. And depending where you're at in the program, you may still feel very hungry or painfully hungry. But it is important to recognize what moderately hungry looks like. And when we get into the fasting, we also need to notice the difference between a little bit hungry and moderately hungry, because hunger comes in waves. And if you're just feeling a little bit hungry, then you just kind of like, you don't have to react to that. And then more importantly, especially when it comes to like emotional eating and boredom eating and stress eating, is like a lot of times, if we can actually get used to using the scale, it's like when you're just like, oh, I think I'm going to go and eat something. It's like, okay, put your hand on your stomach. Are you feeling moderately hungry? And if the answer is no, then you don't need to go for a snack. You just need a break. Do a little meditation, do some deep breathing, right? So that's sort of the hunger levels. And then we have to also understand our satiety, sort of our scale, like a scale for our satiety. So again, especially if you just finished eating. So this is not something you'll be able to do if you're about to eat, but you could still do this, Michelle, or everyone, because like you said, I'm not actually hungry. So let's figure out what you are. So on our scale of sort of satisfaction, we have We have, again, neither hungry nor full, right? Where you're just like, whatever, I don't really sense anything. And then you have just barely satisfied. You have satisfied, moderately full, very full, or absolutely painfully stuffed. I'm going to say those again. Put your hand on your belly. So neither hungry nor full, just barely satisfied, satisfied, moderately full, very full, or absolutely painfully stuffed. So let me know where you're at right now on sort of that end of the scale, okay? Where are you right now with regards to your satiety or your satisfaction? And I'll just give you guys a few seconds here. And we'll see where everybody's at. So ideally, when we finish our meals, when you guys finish your meals, I want you to feel either satisfied or even possibly moderately full, especially as we move into phase 3 and we're eating less meals in a day. Brenda said between 3. So sort of like satisfied to moderately full, I'm going to assume. So yeah, so we want to make sure that when we finish our meals, we're feeling satisfied to moderately full. Just barely satisfied is not enough. We're not getting enough calories in our meal. Very full, we probably had too much, right? But satisfied to moderately full is kind of where we want to be. So again, we're going to practice this during the second half of the month. And I'm going to get this scale up inside the group. And then when you're eating, what you can do is a couple of little different tips and tricks. So number one, like I said, before you eat anything, it's always a good idea to assess, right? And we don't need to feel like we have to eat just because that's what society told us to do, is that lunch is at 12. So, pay attention and ask yourself, okay, how hungry am I? And do I really need to eat? And then you can also do this, obviously, at the end of your meals. Put your hand on your stomach and start to ask yourself that question, where am I at on that sort of satiety scale? And try to figure out from there, are you eating too much? Because I'm giving you some portion sizes, but it doesn't mean that you have to follow them to a T. Again, a lot of you are like, oh my God, Haley, I'm so full, I can't eat the whole bowl of soup. Then don't eat it. I want you guys to listen to your body, right? But what you can also do is, if you know you have a tendency for overeating, another little trick you can do is you can, before your meal is done, before your plate is empty, put your hand on your belly and ask yourself, where am I at? Am I satisfied? If you're satisfied, you can have a few more bites. If you're already moderately full, you got to call it quits, no matter what's on the plate. You can save them for leftovers if the thought of putting it in the garbage is like, I can't do that. That's fine. Save them for leftovers. But once you hit moderately full, fork goes down, you're done. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how good it is. Doesn't matter if it's healthy. We're done. Okay. So those are some things we're going to practice on. Now, a couple of things that you guys will what we're going to start to tune into is, again, sensing into the body and sensing into what the body is telling us, because the body sends us a lot of signals, but we're just ignoring them. So physically, some things that we're going to be looking for is like stomach is growling, having a headache, feeling shaky or irritable, feeling stuffed, feeling bloated, feeling lethargic, feeling full, having low energy, high energy, sluggish, feeling thirsty. All of this is information about our eating, right? It's telling us a lot. And for instance, like before you started the program, or if you're at the beginning of the program, or after a cheat meal or a flex meal on a Saturday, right? When you get to eat what you want, if you're there in the program, pay attention to how you feel physically. When do you feel your best? Do you feel your best when you're eating the flat belly meals? Or do you feel your best after your Saturday night meal? Start paying attention to what happens physically. And then also start thinking about, again, as we build awareness, is what is happening mentally and emotionally when we eat and when we make decisions about our food. Is there anxiousness? Are we stressed? Are we happy? Are we sad? Are we relaxed? Are we bored? Are we even aware of the fact that we're eating? Are we craving something? Usually we're not actually craving food, we're craving something else. And there's a little exercise you can do is you just write down for instance, let's say you have cookies, right? You have a slip up and you eat cookies. Well, write down on a piece of paper, what do cookies mean to you? Like, what is it satisfying? It's usually some deeper emotion. It's really not about the cookie, it's something else. And so the first part of this is like tuning in and becoming aware of what that cookie means. Like, what are you trying to solve? Because typically food is like a coping mechanism. You're trying to solve something. What is the emotion that you're trying to solve? Other things that you can start to pay or start to pay attention to in this whole month together as we focus on mindfulness is like, do you have a tendency to undereat, or do you have a tendency to overeat? How do your emotions affect your eating patterns? What happens on days that you're particularly stressed? What happens on days that you're maybe not as busy, like on the weekends when you're not distracted? What happens when you get too hungry? What happens if you eat too much? How do different foods affect your satiety and your fullness? Like when you're eating like your protein and your healthy fats and your fiber rich foods, how do you feel versus when you maybe have I mean, you guys aren't going to be eating donuts for breakfast anytime soon, but maybe you will. So, but when you do, I want you to pay attention to that. Certain foods are going to leave you feeling hungrier faster, right? And we need to tune into that. Let's see what else here. Other questions is like noticing how your environment affects your eating, right? Like, do you stop eating in accordance to what's in front of you or in accordance to how you feel? For most of us right now, it's probably based on how much is in front of us. And what we need to learn to do is to stop eating based on how we feel, right? Again, sensing into satiety. Are there certain environments that lead you to overeat, right? So going to a restaurant or eating in front of the computer while you're working, whatever it may be. And then on the flip sides, are there certain environments or certain foods that have you sort of control your appetite a little bit better? So these are all different questions that we can start to explore. And we're going to do that again in the second half of the month, where we're really going to try and tune into paying more attention to how we experience food and how food is, how our body is communicating messages about appetite awareness with us that we need to start to tune into. Because if you guys can nail these two, okay, eating slowly and understanding when you're truly hungry and when you're truly satisfied, you will never need to count calories again. You will never need to count calories again. Your body will tell you when to start eating, and it will tell you when to stop eating, but we do have to tune in. All right, ladies, any questions about eating to satisfied, or comments? Or are you guys excited about working on this for the next month together? Or are you like, oh my God, this sounds like a nightmare? I'll give you a few seconds here, and then I'm going to be pausing this. And again, we're really gonna focus in on this, eating slowly first 2 weeks, eating to satisfied, and just tuning into our body's cues for the last 2 weeks. Eating slowly is gonna be it comes first because it's gonna help us, to eat to satisfied, right? Because again, if we're speed eating, it's gonna be really hard. Brenda said, I did it. It was very hard. Did you just do it now, Brenda? And Bridget said, definitely, I think it will really help. That's awesome. This is going to be really, 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 really good for my ladies that, anyone that struggles with stress eating or emotional eatings or cravings or any of those things, right? That we have to, it's understanding, like getting that awareness of where this is coming from. Typically it's not about the food. It's about something else. We just got to dig deep and figure out what that is. All right, Martine says, all sounds good for me. That's awesome. So I think that wraps it up for today, ladies. I'm sorry about the various technical issues that happened. I've got to figure out how Zoom has changed. Sometimes they do this, they suddenly change things, and I'm like, what? It just looked completely different this morning, and for some reason I couldn't get it to go live. That's okay. I've recorded this. You guys are split into two. We'll get this all wrapped up. And we'll continue to explore this for the next 30 days together. As always, if you have questions, you know where to reach me. And until then, have a fantastic weekend, ladies. And I'll be asking you for your meal plans either today or tomorrow. So feel free to post those up for extra accountability. And I will talk to you all very soon. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
You're welcome.